Live from SABC studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Welcome to this week's first episode of the Watchdog. My name is Vuya Mvogo and thank you for tuning in. On the show this evening, President Cyril Ramaphosa motion of no confidence hits a snag. We speak to the leaders of the two political parties leading the charge.
We are going to find a way, commanders. We are going to find a way to liberate even those that lead us.
Listen to Dula leader Nhlanhla Lux out of jail are the people who showed up in court, and his utterances outside court telling us something about what could be the next step for him and his movement. We also look at a movement of a different kind, one that is making its presence felt in the area of water rights. The Nhlanhla National Land Movement led a march today, launching a campaign to protest poor provision of water and unsafe drinking water by the government. All that coming up in tonight's episode of The Watchdog, which starts right now. Opposition party ATM's no confidence motion in President Cyril Ramaphosa has hit a snag and looks set to be postponed. But the DA says it's ready to pick up the cudgels. Well, the Western Cape High Court today struck off the roll and urgent application by the African Transformation Movement, which sought to force a secret ballot in the voting process. On the same day, the Democratic Alliance announced that it is also picking up on the issue. ATM President Vuyole Tuzungula and DA leader John Steenhuisen are on standby to discuss their next steps. But first, here's Bulelani Phillips setting the scene for that discussion.
A motion pending for 2 years, one that has been dogged by a legal tussle between the ATM and the Speaker over a secret ballot. The ATM says it has now asked for the no confidence motion to be postponed, pending another High Court application demanding a secret ballot.
The ATM will enroll the secret ballot case in the normal court roll because the judge said it is impossible for her to hear the matter and give judgment within 48 hours to be in time for the debate that is scheduled on Wednesday, the 30th of March. The ATM will henceforth write an urgent letter to the Speaker of the National Assembly requesting her to postpone the debate on the no confidence motion in Ramaphosa until the court has heard the matter.
Parliament maintains that the case is unfounded.
The Speaker remains of a view that as public representatives of the electorate, members of Parliament are not supposed to always operate under a veil of secrecy. Considerations of transparency and openness sometimes demand a display, as the Constitutional Court asserted, of courage and resoluteness to boldly advance the best interests of those the members of the NA represent.
The DA will also be tabling a no-confidence motion in Cabinet on Wednesday.
For me, in this particular instance, a secret ballot is less of an issue. The fact that MPs should be allowed to vote with their conscience and not simply have a chief whip standing up and saying, well, I represent 240 MPs and therefore I'm casting their vote in a certain way. I think that's wrong.
The ANC says, in its words, bring it on.
There are two motions that are scheduled to take place in Parliament on the 30th. The first motion is from the ATM, where they are passing a vote of no confidence to the President of the country, President Ramaphosa. The second motion is from the DA, where they are passing a motion of no confidence to the Cabinet, excluding President Ramaphosa. You could see that they are playing political games, and we as the ANC, we are ready. Let them bring it on. We are ready for that. They went to court because they demand a secret ballot, and the Speaker has ruled against that. I'm happy that the court is not doing overreach. They allow us as Parliament, as a separate arm of state, to run our own programs. Now they've dismissed that case to say he must go back to Parliament. We are saying bring it on. We still have confidence to our president. We still have confidence to our cabinet. Then a two-party member cannot come and dictate. If they want to be president, they must go and win the elections out there. Then they will come back.
Al-Jamaa supports the ANC. All eyes will now be on Parliament on Wednesday. Ulelani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
Please welcome ATM President Mr. Zungula and DA Leader Mr. Stian Hazen. Good evening, gentlemen. Thanks very much for your time this evening.
Good evening, Vuyo. Great to be with you and great to be with my colleague from Parliament.
Mr. Zungula, so where to have you written that urgent letter that your spokesperson said you were going to write on the back of today's court ruling?
Evening, Vuyo. Evening, John. We've already written the letter. The Speaker's office has confirmed that indeed they received the letter. And I want to clarify, the court did not deal with the merits today. It only dealt with the urgency. So
Yes.
people must not be misled to think that we've lost the case. It's just a matter of timing.
Okay. So what then, from on your side, should we expect on Wednesday?
On Wednesday, what we are going to do is that we've already asked for a postponement, meaning the Speaker has to accede to our request and that motion will not sit. And will participate in the DA's motion and will support that the entire cabinet must resign, because we're of the view that the President Ramaphosa and the cabinet have failed the people of our country. They do not need to continue leading the country into the drain. We need a new cabinet. We need a new president.
John, what happens to your motion? You're going ahead on Wednesday?
Well, our motion proceeds. Ours has never been hooked up on the secret ballot, but I would agree with my colleague there that it wasn't dismissed. And I think the Chief Whip has shown a remarkable naivety of both the Constitution and the law in her comments. But we will proceed with our motion on Wednesday as it's set down on the order paper. The two outstanding matters for us are how the Speaker intends to deal with the conflict of interest, where ministers and cabinet ministers are going to be participating and voting in essentially an issue where they have a very direct financial interest. 2 million rand salary, 2 cars, 2 houses, and all the perks that go with it. The second thing is the voting mechanism. Now, we know that in Parliament, you've always been able to record the votes of individuals. But since Parliament got burnt down, that has not been possible. And our suggestion to the Speaker has been, because this should be a matter of conscience and not just something that is block voted on by a chief whip representing all their MPs, that a roll call system is used, similar to it's used in other legislatures around the world, where the MPs' names are called out and they're either noted as absent and they either vote yay, nay, or abstain. And I believe that will be a far better way to ensure that we get a proper division in this particular motion and that people can see how their members of Parliament have voted.
What are you accusing cabinet or cabinet ministers of doing or not doing? John?
Well, it's not about us accusing them. It's about their own record. As we revealed last week, by their own performance agreements, they've ended up with a paltry 32%. We've got reports from the July unrest which point to the executive and the cabinet. We've got people in the cabinet implicated in the Zondo Commission. We've got a number of absolute abject failures where the crime rate has gone up, where unemployment has dropped, and where poverty and malnutrition have increased. This is a poverty cabinet that's causing poverty in South Africa. And our point is, you're not going to beat poverty in South Africa with the same people who created that poverty sitting around the table making the same decisions. Our cabinet is too big, it's too ineffective, it's too indifferent, and in some instances, it's too incompetent or corrupt to be able to serve the people of South Africa. It's time for a rethink on the size and makeup of the cabinet, and time to have people of integrity serving in there who are not tainted by these reports and by the findings of courts and the findings of judicial inquiries.
Mr. Zungula, remind us of what your issues are with regard to President Ramaphosa.
In addition to what John is saying, what we believe as the ATM is that the buck stops with the president. The cabinet does not hire itself. The ministers did not employ themselves as ministers. There is a person that is responsible for the hiring and the firing of ministers. And with all of the corruption allegations, the adverse findings by the public protector on some of the ministers, the person responsible, which is Mr. Ramaphosa, has not done any action. So for us, we believe that all of them, including Ramaphosa, they've failed. When it comes to directly him, Ramaphosa, he took over in 2018. Now it is 4 years later in 2022, and the direction the country is taking, there is an increase in the cost of living, increase in crime, increase in unemployment. And if you look at the general track record of him being president, things have gone from bad to worse. Therefore, our motion of confidence is to rescue South Africa from the direction the country is taking under Ramaphosa's leadership.
Well, the chief whip of the majority party says there's no two-member party that's going to dictate to parliamentarians what they should do.
Budvuyo, look, we've got a responsibility as members of parliament to hold the executive accountable. The constitution allows members of parliament to put through such motions. Now, it is in that spirit of the constitution, it is in the spirit of South Africa that we are going to continue raising issues, because for us as the ATM, it is not about the number of seats that we have in parliament. It is about registering in the hearts and minds of the people of our country that when South Africa was heading towards this situation that we are seeing under the leadership of Mr. Ramaphosa, ATM stood up and said, no more further. We do not want this person to continue leading South Africa into the drain. And it is the duty of the members of parliament to vote with their conscience and vote and abide by the oath of office. That is why the issue of the secret ballot becomes important, because we know there is no way in which members of parliament can vote with their conscience and abide by the oath of office if they'll be threatened by their own political parties about their party positions.
Bring it on, John, says Phemi Majodina, the ANC chief whip, for what she calls political games that you're playing.
Well, I think that it's quite a disappointing day when a chief whip of a majority party in parliament calls motions envisaged in terms of the Constitution and these oversight mechanisms created by our Constitution a game. But given the fact that this is the same party who has a minister who doesn't believe in the judiciary and a premier in KwaZulu-Natal who somehow thinks that we should rule by parliamentary decree, it's hardly a surprise. We're not dealing with committed Democrats here. The truth of the reality is, whether you're a one-member party or a 89-member party or a 200-member party, you have got those mechanisms available to you, and it's a form of accountability. That's why the constitutional frame has put them in there. I'm glad she's very confident, and I hope that each of them are going to, one by one, get up and defend this poverty cabinet, because in doing so, they're going to expose to South Africa that they are convinced to put their own party against the people of South Africa. They're happy that ministers water cannon SASSA grant recipients outside SASSA offices. They're happy with the fact that 7,500 children die of malnutrition under the age of 5 every year, while they're buying almost R1 million vehicles for themselves. That they're happy that the crime stats and gender-based stats go through the roof, but there's no accountability. Let them bring it on and defend the indefensible, because the people of South Africa need to see how they're voting and to be able to hold them accountable. So I'm also looking for that. I think it's going to be a day of reckoning, and I say to her, bring it on as well.
Well, she's confident, but are you confident that your motion will...
Well, I'm very confident, Vuyo, but the reality is, even if the motion does not succeed, we are going to be having this discussion around the size of the cabinet, its inefficiency, its ineffective, its indifference, and the fact that it is this cabinet and its leadership that is driving South Africans into poverty every single day through corruption, mismanagement, and complete incompetence. And I think it is important that we have that discussion. So win or lose on Wednesday, I think that this conversation is frankly long overdue. And the reality is that the president passed his own motion of no confidence in his cabinet by sucking up a lot of their responsibilities into his own office, because even he knows that when it comes to cutting red tape, dealing with the environment, dealing with small business, dealing with investment and growth, he can't trust any of his own cabinet to do what he needs done.
Violetu, are you confident about yours?
We are very, very confident. And for us, it's a matter of principle, Budvuyo, because it can't be that in 2017, the Constitutional Court ruled and affirmed the use of a secret ballot as a means of a voting mechanism, given how volatile and toxic South African politics is. We know that South Africa is struggling with political killings. We know there's a couple of members in parliament who've been poisoned. We know that even recently, one member of parliament has received death threats simply by asking the president to appear before SCOPA. Therefore, for the speaker to take that lightly, the threat over members of parliament's lives, that for us as the ATM, we're not going to support. It is critical that South Africa is a principle-governed state where rules are rules and rules are consistent regardless who is going to face the motion of no confidence. It can't be that when it's convenient, the motion of no confidence should be done by means of an open ballot system. But when it's not convenient, it should be done by a secret ballot. We as the ATM are defending principle, because it is only when we are principled as members of parliament who are going to take the country forward.
And what happens if the speaker does not accede to your request that you put to her through the letter that you say you've written to her?
The motion that we put that is supposed to be debated on Wednesday, it is an ATM-sponsored motion. And the rules does allow that we, as the sponsors of that motion, we can withdraw it. And it is in line with the court proceedings that we had today, where even with her legal representatives, we've also agreed on the postponement. And this is something that we did also in 2020 when we were faced with this issue, where we requested that let us withdraw the motion in Parliament to allow court proceedings to actually to be completed. Only when court proceedings are completed, we can go back to the Speaker, having the wisdom and the counsel of the courts.
Okay, John, quick one. It's a numbers game at the end of the day, but did I get you right? Did you say that even if the motion doesn't carry, you feel that you will still have made a statement, but also you will have forced conversations around the issues that you've raised?
Yeah, of course, we'd love the motion to pass, and we're going all out to try and get as many people to vote for it, and that is the aim. But the point I'm making is that even if it's not successful, we have got this discussion. We're going to continue this discussion, because if the Speaker doesn't accede to an open roll call ballot, and there's no way of determining how people vote, I believe that decision itself and that vote then becomes reviewable, and that'll open up an opportunity for us then to get clarity from the courts, for instance, on this procedure, given the fact that it's never happened in South Africa before. And so I think there's some important ground here, but we have got to start discussing the quality and the ability of this cabinet, because they are driving people into poverty every single day, and they're not being held accountable, not against their performance contracts, not against their own agreements with their departments. They're not being held accountable when adverse reports come out. If there had been a report like the one that came out after July unrest in any other modern democracy, I can assure you that minister would not have a job. Instead, we see the police commissioner being targeted, when in fact the problem lies with the police minister. And yet he's walking away from this entire thing scot-free, despite the fact that that report says that the executive must bear some of the blame there. So for whatever reason is, Mr. Ramaphosa seems completely timid and unable to hold his own people accountable. And rather than confront them, he just usurps their power and responsibility. And they remain on our payroll on a very, very large salary, and they remain behaving in an incompetent, ineffective, and uncaring way, while many, many South Africans join the unemployment queue, are being pushed further into poverty, or unable to even provide basic foodstuffs for their family at the end of the day. This is not a government that's caring, and it's a government that's got to change.
Okay.
And we've got to have that conversation.
Gentlemen, thanks to both of you for your time this evening. And as my colleague Bulelani Philip said in that insert that set the scene for this conversation, all eyes will now be on Parliament on Wednesday. After the break, Operation Dudula leader Nhlanhla Lux out of jail. Are the people who showed up in court and his utterances outside court telling us something about what could be the next step for him and his movement? That's what we are asking after this short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Operation Dudula leader Nhlanhla Lux is out of jail. But the question we're asking this evening is whether the people who showed up in court and the utterances he made outside court are telling us something about what could be the next step for his movement. But here's an insert to get us going on this conversation.
Nhlanhla Mutlawi, also known as Nhlanhla Lux, was released on bail with strict conditions. He is forbidden from making contact with the complainant and has a deadline to hand over his passport. His legal counsel successfully argued against an additional condition confining him to the Gauteng province. It says it feels vindicated by the judgment, which proves Mutlawi's prolonged stay behind bars was unwarranted.
When the prosecutor came to see whether or not bail can be arranged at the police station, then the investigating officer raised some concerns, and the prosecutor then decided to step back and allow the bail application to be heard in court, so that he then allows those concerns that were raised by the investigating officer to be investigated. He gave the investigating officer till today, and when the investigating officer came back today, he indeed confirmed that no, he has investigated the concerns and they have no merit, and therefore hence we did not oppose bail.
I want us to be progressive in our thinking. I want us.
Mutlawi thanked supporters and civil society organizations for standing behind him. He faces charges of housebreaking, theft and malicious damage to property. This after a Soweto man he accused of being a drug dealer opened a criminal case against him.
And what's important is that we are going to come out and emerge victorious. Yes. We are already victorious. But we're going to make sure that we hold each other's hands, even this is the time. There's no other time. This is the time that we live and die for our people.
Mutlawi alleges there's a hit on his life and that those against Operation Dudula want him dead. Mbalenhle Mthethwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
That's what happened today. Well, to help us make sense of some of the things we saw in that insert, the optics, as some people would say. We are joined by political analysts Xolani Dube and Ongama Mtimka. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, Vuya, and your viewers. Thank you for having us.
Let me humble myself to you, viewer, as well as to the viewers.
Thank you. Really appreciate your time this evening. I was looking at, the people who came to show support for, Nhlanhla Lux Mutlawi, as now we know him to be. Kenny Kunene and, Patriotic Alliance activists came in numbers. One wonders what could be going on here. Xolani?
Look, I think we need not to worry about what you are seeing, in front of our television, because we were told that revolution would never be televised. But what we need to be really concerned is what I termed as the fourth socio-economic and political power transition that is currently happening in our country. And we know it very well that the British, for its power preservation in their colonies, especially here in South Africa, they handpick and they also market and they impose leaders to us South African natives with a mandate to further the interest of the British. And so I think what we have to understand is that we are in the fourth socio-economic and political power transition that is not designed by us South African natives, but designed by those who control the means of production, of which most of them, they report to the metropole, of which is the Britain.
Now, we're talking about Operation Dudula and its leader, Nhlanhla Lux. And so when you say someone, or it's the tendency of the Brits to handpick leaders, who are you talking about exactly?
Look, you started from the so-called in 1910, where they handed over South Africa to the Afrikaners. And then from there, in 1994, they handed over the administration of the natives to the so-called black political elite. And now it's not by a mistake where you see the ANC falling apart and there is a rise or the mushrooming of so-called leaders in our communities. But when you look at these leaders, they are not organic leaders. These are leaders who, to a certain extent, are being imposed upon us. And so that's why I'm saying South Africa is in a transition. And so possible 2024 is the transition where we will see another power dynamics in the South African context. And so the implosion that you see in the traditional political system where the ANC is no more and we don't see PAC and the others, but there's a new type of political organization, there's a new type of leaders that are coming into South Africa, of which I think we as South African natives, we have to accept it that this transition is happening without us, but is going to define who we are in future. Possibly, the South African natives might be wiped out in the South African symbolisms of power, like in parliament, as we have seen it now in tertiary institution, you go to the government department and also you go to the financial sector. It's very rare to find the South African native.
But would you say Nhlanhla Lux is organic, or imposed?
Look, as I'm saying, when you do political analysis, you have to look at the systems and structures holistically and to ask yourself, who are the producers or who are being produced by this current epoch in our country and who are behind the scenes or who are the ringmasters of these circus? Surely it is not the South African natives, but it definitely is the British. And so as I'm saying that if these people who currently are leading our society were an antithesis to the British agenda, trust me, they were not going to be televised, they were not going to be marketed. Definitely they were going to be silenced, like they silenced your Steve Biko, like they silenced your Robert Sobukwe. And so we have to be very worried when we see a leader becoming another celebrity, because, we learn it from the past. Look at the ANC, who were the celebrity in 1994, where they are. They betrayed us. And now they are also asking themselves what they've done to the British. But the British is no longer concerned about them. They are creating other political celebrities. And so that's why I'm saying even this issue of Operation Dudula, the traction that is getting from the media, from the analysts, and it definitely, I can assure you, Vio, that it's just another social construct that really distracts us from what is happening in our country.
Okay. Ongabam Timka, what do you make of Nhlanhla Lux and what he represents?
Very interesting input from my colleague Xolani there. So I'm tempted to follow the line of thinking, but to problematize. I don't think it's only his, but a lot of other people in South Africa who analyze the South African problem departing from a structural and systemic perspective. And the tendency with that analysis, while it's important in understanding the grander schemes of things, is the limitation that all grand narratives have. It tends to minimize the agency of people who rise as a result of particular conditions in history, and in fact may indeed be located within the broader system, but how they arise precisely because of their own agency and are engaging with the space in their own communal settings. And in fact, not only do they attempt to change the system, but they themselves are changed. So my view would depart slightly from the grand narrative perspective or grand conspiracy perspective. While I recognize the power of the system, South African capitalism, while I recognize its power, I would not minimize the rise of specific leaders and communities who use their own agency, engaging in what otherwise seem to be localized issues. So in this instance, it's a very specific issue around, one, the grievance around the role that foreign nationals play in the country, both in terms of the whole narrative of taking our jobs, and then also the alleged criminality that is associated with the illegal immigrants. Now, to me, more specifics than the grand narrative approach, this is a function of a failing state. I wouldn't say failed state yet. When you have a failing state, you have pockets of the internal sovereignty of a country begin to be challenged by groups. Groups are important in South African politics, in general, because they influence policy choices, and in fact, in systems like the US, they are so embedded in the decision-making processes at a legislative level, or even, in fact, capturing executive power, where we'll get the theories of deep state. So my view is that while it's important to recognize the broad structure, you've got to recognize people who rise and exploit grievances that are legitimate communal issues because of an apparent failure on the part of the state in terms of protecting its internal sovereignty. We've seen not only Operation Dudula do this, we've seen the EFF do this, where they felt that their activism and mobilization was important to protect state property, to protect Black people, among other things. So these are all symptoms of a political system that's transitioning from party dominance towards plurality, and not just multi-party, but pluralistic politics, where groups feel that they've got a role to play and they engage in the space, some not necessarily to contest political power with an intention to get to municipality, province, or national government, but to advance their cause. And indeed, the groups, because it's in the nature of agency to transform not just the structures that are intended by the agents, but also the agents themselves. You have Nhlanhla Lux emerging as a political leader of note, not necessarily as a deliberate strategy, but as an emergent phenomenon of the activity of engaging in struggle itself.
Is it your assertion that perhaps we are minimizing, as put it, the agency of, in this specific case, Nhlanhla Lux?
My view is that we must recognize both the systemic and the personal agencies of people who lead social movements. And I think that in that recognition, we must take note of the gap that's created by state failure, and also, in fact, be critical of these groups because precisely because they are not competent to investigate criminality, they end up, advocating mob justice in the same way that the Pagat of, I think, late 1990s and early 2000s had done.
Xolani, After this conversation, I'm having another conversation with a group calling itself the Nhlanhla National Land Movement, which I suppose, speaks also to what Ongama just raised about the importance of groups and the void that they tend to feel. But I just wanted to, I'm wondering if, you agree with Ongama when he says that they are not necessarily about contesting power, but filling that void that is there and glaring.
Look, when you enter to such a space, it's about power contestation and redefining it. And so if you enter into this space without that particular aim, I think you are wasting people's time and hope. Because people, when they follow you based on what they think that you can do to change their socio-economic lives, And so if you are not going to do that, but you enter for academic purposes, I think you are also entrenching this evil temple that was created by the British in our country. Mm-hmm. And that currently is devouring the souls of the South African natives. The sad part, is that we as South African natives, we live a predetermined life. We live what we call it a delayed life of our masters. Whatever that we do, they've already planned and they know where is the direction of this country is going. And for academics, business, so-called South African native academics, I don't think they are, and native business people, so-called national bourgeoisie, they don't have a script that predetermine the life of the South African natives, because they believe in throwing or in letting doves to fly as a sign of peace, not knowing that power has nothing to do with peace. Power is a continuous kind of a struggle. Like Leon Trotsky made it clear that struggle is permanent, talking about permanent revolution. And so we think that when we talk about civil society, about all these groups that are mushrooming, and when you look at the disappearance or the turn that these groups who mushroom tend to become, you'll find out that they become the weapon of our oppressors against us, the oppressed. And so that's why I'm saying that in South Africa, we have not seen a single leader that was not imposed on us. And all of these leaders that you see were imposed on us by our masters. Hence, I am very skeptical to say this Operation Tutula and the others who are occupying the space that the ANC is leaving are the people that we can trust. Because if we as the South African natives, we don't stand up and create our own narratives and our own systems and structures that are going to challenge the existing one. Okay. But we just want to endear ourselves to the British and British systems and structures. I think we are doing what you call it shadow boxing. Hence, I am saying people like Nhlanhla Lux, Malema, and all these so-called political merchants that you find in that parliament are the people that we as the South African natives, we need not to take them serious. They've been betraying us number of times. We're talking about the land issue. We're talking about radical economic transformation. We failed from those things. Today we talk about the Operation Tutula. We are going to fail in this Operation Tutula. And what next?
Okay. Now, I want to, as a last point, play a clip, something that I pick up. I hope I'm not reading too much into it, but just listen to what he had to say about, what happened to him at the weekend while he was in jail.
We are going to find a way, commanders. We are going to find a way to liberate even those that lead us. We are going to find a way to liberate the police force. Let me now speak the way you want me to speak, and I've been denying to speak this way. When we take this country, because that time is coming, when we take this country, we are going to move the police service back to being a police force. And we're going to then give the power back to the people, because our ancestors, like Steve Biko, what they actually died for is for the people to come in. So the people shall come in, and the people will come in. Not some people will come in. The people will come in.
Let me start with you, Ongama. I mean, taking back the country. Talks about creating a police force, evoking Biko. Does that tell you anything that perhaps hitherto or up to this point we didn't know or didn't suspect like about him?
Sure. So, as I said before, the act of struggle does not just transforms the intended outward world of the person who's struggling, but also internally the person. I doubt very much Nhlanhla Lux had envisaged himself being in the position that he is in. Never mind since July last year, about a few weeks ago. It is the activities and the emerging issues in the processes of engaging in struggle, in my view, that have bolstered him now. I mean, one now has slept in a holding cell for some time. We saw photos of him in an actual prison wearing, orange uniform. So to now frame himself within exploiting some foreign khefar, that he is going to bolster the police and bring a force. This is the way of all strong men throughout history. If you look at our own history, so in my view, I think he's being transformed in the spur of the moment to become a person who aspires to political power, which may not necessarily have been what was envisaged. Last one, Bravuyo. So when I recognize groups that are operating within a country, and in fact this is something within political science, a school that has recognized the role of groups for some time. The idea is not to necessarily say they should be seen in an endearing light, but to recognize that they have a role, and they in the short term have got pressure and influence as the outcome. So influence policy, influence whatever response is desired. When I mentioned acquiring power earlier on, I was talking about getting a ward councillor office, getting a municipality, and getting a seat in the National Assembly. So social movements generally don't start with that as an immediate short-term strategic objective. Okay, quick last word from you, Xolani, on the same question of what he said there, evoking Biko, police force taking the country.
Look, remember how Cyril Ramaphosa also was marketed as a Mandela, and I guess he also trying to steal the Biko image so that we look at him and we see Steve Biko. But the fact of the matter, as I've said, the life of the South African natives is always predetermined by the British. The day we started to challenge that predetermination of our lives through leaders that emerge organically from our communities, leaders who are not going to be televised behind bars, leaders who are not going to be given a television or whatever slot, leaders who are going to be seen doing things that the state would say, this is our enemy. And those are the people who liberate the South African natives. As I've said, people like Steve Biko, you know it very well that his life was always been logged, as well his history, as well as that of Mangaliso Sobo, where they were always being airbrushed in the east of South Africa. And we have to ask ourselves, people like Mandela, who were promoted by Jos Slovo, Harold Walpy, and the others, became our leaders. And as I've said, the ANC, the organization that he brought along to lead us in this country, look where we are now. We're in an inferno. There is a huge violence amongst the natives in this country. Hence, I am saying the life of the South African natives is predetermined by the British, and the only way to maintain and to control us in this circus is through violence. Why Nhlanhla Lux and the others never emerged in society, not through violence? Why they never emerged in society by mobilizing society and dealing with certain issues is not different from Julius. He emerged through, he used Jacob Zuma to become who he is today. And so it means that us, South African natives, we have to kill each other so that we can rise. I think that is the strategy of the British. And through the strategy, trust me, Vuyo, we are not going anywhere. We are going in circles.
And that's where we're going to leave it. Let me thank both of you for your contributions to this conversation this evening. I would have wanted you to respond to some of the tweets that we've seen coming through thick and fast, but we don't have time because we have to go to another conversation. But let me read a few. Vincent Kunutu says, the case of Nhlanhla Lux has taught me that people are tired of politicians and government. Here's another one. Kalela Asbaizi says, as an active member of Operation Tudula and Put South Africans First, I can tell Xolani with authority that is very wrong. We've been active in raising illegal immigration and employment of illegal foreign nationals for more than 2 years. Respect us, please. Let's see if we can squeeze in a couple more. One thing I dislike about such movements is that at the end, it is the innocent that suffer. Those that initiate programs go to their comfortable places after using the community to fight on their own hidden agenda. Nhlanhla is imposed and using people. Richard Kulu says, Operation Tudula is assisting South Africans because government is failing them, but praising foreign nationals who are criminals in our country. And what is painful, our government is kept quiet. But when the country is on fire, we start pointing fingers. Well, some of the tweets that have come through there following that conversation I was having with Xolani Dube and Ongama Mtimka on the back of the release today of Nhlanhla Lux. Was released on bail with strict conditions. He is forbidden from making contact with the complainant and has a deadline to hand over his passport. His legal counsel successfully argued against an additional condition confining him to the Gauteng province. It feels vindicated. It says it feels vindicated by the judgment, which proves that Nhlanhla Lux's prolonged stay behind bars was unwarranted. Now, let's look now at a movement of a different kind, one that is making its presence felt in the area of water rights. The Inyanda National Movement led a march today in Bisho in the Eastern Cape, launching a campaign to protest poor provision of water and unsafe drinking water by the government. Now, joining us now to talk about this particular movement is Moiponi Jwali, who is one of the people behind this movement. Moiponi, I'm hoping that that line is holding now, and thank you very much for agreeing to talk to us this evening. What was today's march about exactly? Hi, Moipone. I'm hoping you can hear me. What was today's march about? Please unmute. Please unmute.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Please. Okay. Good evening, Vuyo, and then the viewers at home. The march today, it was about the crisis of water in the Eastern Cape. But the crisis is not only about the Eastern Cape, is across the country. But we have seen recently that in Eastern Cape, in different municipalities where there's been shortage of water, where our people are drinking water that are being used by the livestock, are sharing water with livestock. And also we have seen that few weeks back where our people have been drinking decontaminated water, where the sewage has been spilled in our water systems, and the municipalities have not even warned our people about that. So our people discovered when they were experiencing diarrhea and become ill after drinking the water. And even now, the municipality has not yet assured our people that the water that they are drinking are safe at the moment.
Well,
so
I don't know if you saw the Minister of Water Affairs, Senzo Mchunu, last week gave a briefing on the state of water in our country and pretty much admitted to virtually everything that you have said, but promised or made an undertaking that they are doing their best as the government to actually turn the situation around. Do you believe him or do you not?
I don't believe that our municipalities and our government is capable of doing that, because when you check that there's a poor services, poor infrastructure, so they need to present the plan to the public of what are they going to do with maintaining or making sure that our infrastructure are in good conditions. At the moment, nothing has been presented to the public of what is going to happen. It's just talks, and we need them to account to everything that is happening in our country in terms of the water distribution, and also in terms of that there are different factors that are contributing to this. Number one is this disparities of water distribution in the country, especially in the rural areas where you'll find that our people, because of the poor background and because of their in villages, they are not having access to clean water, where you'd find that in urban areas, where in the lily white suburbs, the water maintenance is good and people are accessing water as they can. But
okay.
in our villages, there is poor service in terms of water supply.
Okay, now, I mean, Ongama Mtimka, one of the panelists I had in the previous discussion, talks about grand conspiracies. And you may have heard Xolani Dube talking about these groups that are, emerging, and he has a theory of what lies behind them. Do you have any sponsors? Are there people who are backing you financially or otherwise? And also, do you have perhaps alliances with other groups or groupings around the country?
The National Land Movement is a movement that is made by livestock farmers. It's a self-organized movement. It's not backed by any other maybe unforeseen agents behind our back. We are self-organized, and we are the people on the ground. We are the ones who feel the brunt of this shortage of water. So water is key in our life. That is why we are saying as Nylanhla that we will fight this. It's not about who is behind us. The people themselves have to wake up, has to show that the government need to account to us. So this is just a mere smearing campaign that when the people rise up, they are supported by people behind us. Yes, we have alliances with the same people who are mobilizing around the issues of land and water in our communities.
Okay.
Thank you, Boy.
That's where we're going to leave it. Thank you very much for your time this evening, Moipone Jwai, who is the national chairperson of Nylanhla National Land Movement. Today, they marched on the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs offices in Bisho in the Eastern Cape. And that brings us to the end of our show this evening. Do join us again tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. sharp. Have a good night.